He's back.
Here's Jenny.
Welcome back, my friend. It's been a while. Well, welcome to the listeners. They've been with us this whole time, but you, Brad, from the UK, British Brad, are gracing us with your presence once more.
Hey, what I'd like to say, I've been, deep in meditation in the outback, and taking in thoughts and being in touch with the universe and life. But no, I've just been dealing with shit and trying to stay alive like the rest of us. So my apologies, listeners. I know a few of you have messaged to say, what's Flash done? Has he buried you in the garden and covered your body in lime and put you in a shallow grave, or what's going on? But now I'm back. I'm alive. This is me, and it's good to be back. To be honest, I'm not going to lie. I've missed you, Flash, but ultimately I've missed the listeners a lot more.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair. This is why we do it. I was going to say, how can we do like a proof for the listeners that this wasn't pre-recorded? Yeah, proof of life. How do we do that audio?
Well,
so I would just say, who's the president of the United States?
Who the fuck knows?
Good answer.
Yeah. The last I checked, Biden was nudging ahead in Georgia and Pennsylvania. So maybe by the end of this podcast, we could have a quick chat. We could be the first to announce it. Flat.
Yeah, maybe.
We could be the first.
Well, good. So your proof of life there puts you at somewhere between Thursday night to Friday, November.
Anywhere between Tuesday, election day, to yeah.
Well, you said nudging ahead in Georgia and Pennsylvania, so that indicates something. So there you go. Well, so Brad is alive and well as of November 5th or 6th.
Well, and as we've talked about before, if we adopt the Donald Trump approach to things, we should just stop counting the listeners now, Flash, and declare ourselves as the most popular podcast in the world.
I hereby declare, we are the most popular.
Yeah. Stop counting. We are the most popular podcast in the world. That's all you need to know, listeners. So to our listeners that were once a select bunch, you're not so select anymore, because now there are billions of you. So but if you're one of the early adopters, you've always got that. You're always cool. Well, I was listening to them back when they were shit.
That's right. Podcasts like you've never heard before, like you've never seen before.
Exactly. Well, you've certainly never seen it.
Definitely not.
No.
All right. Well, not to hammer on the subject that everyone is already probably sick of, let's move to the second subject that everyone's already sick of.
Or literally
or sick with. We're both are respectively in locked down-ish states.
We are. Yeah.
And so
us in the UK, a lot more than it sounds like. Basically, you can still have a gangbang there, groups of 10 in different households, whereas
Berlin spoke. They were not going to let their weird sex clubs and freaky liberal East German lifestyles. They weren't going to let that go. So, Merkel had to cave and just say, it's part of the culture. Bang away.
Fair enough.
As long as you're wearing a mask.
Well, which a lot of people in those clubs would naturally wear masks. Normally made of
Right. Doesn't have to be, cloth. It can cover your whole face. It could have a zipper on the front. Whatever. Normally
with a leash or a lead around your neck.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very progressive over there in Berlin.
Yeah.
No, there's some. I did want to maybe avoid that for our reunion. Like we could go back to the good old days of just talking about random kind of cool stuff. But there was a couple of things.
These are like Ebola rather than this coronavirus shit. But
Yeah. Which there's still Ebola going on, so we'll save the Ebola update for the next one. But because Corona update. There is some interesting news that like literally just broke this week, and you may have heard of it. The mink strains, mink corona,
Danish mink. It sounds so wrong on so many levels.
Danish mink corona. It's if you didn't know, the Danes are one of the biggest exporters of mink fur there is. So a lot of mink farming going on in Denmark, also the Netherlands, which we'll get to. But there was a mutated strain of corona has appeared in human populations in Denmark that's believed to have started in humans, gone to mink, and now come back. That's right. It's come back
Okay.
from the mink to the humans. And now Denmark has put 250,000 people in the north of the country on a pretty strict lockdown because of this.
Okay.
And they're set to kill 17 million mink.
What?
The mink cull has begun
Oh, hold
to.
on. So this started in humans,
Mm,
went to
yeah, it's
mink.
corona.
Yeah. So it started in humans, or potentially in bats, depending on what theory you buy into. But basically, we're saying it started in humans, it's gone to mink,
Mm,
and it's back into humans.
coming back around again.
And we're culling how many mink?
17 million.
How many humans are we culling? Because surely if we cut down on the humans at the first start of that chain, the mink don't get infected, and therefore the humans don't get infected.
Yeah,
So
but
how
fuck
many?
those mink.
What?
They should have kept it to themselves. Once we gave it to them, they should have just kept it to themselves.
Well, they just thought they were sharing the gift. These kind humans have shared this with us. We'll just pass it on. It's like pass the parcel. You don't pass it on till the music stops, or vice versa.
Look at the mink were gonna die anyway.
Well, the
They
humans
they
are going to die. Everyone's going to die eventually, Flash. That is nature. That's the way it works.
right.
Apart from Donald
These
Trump, who I think actually technically died at least 4 days ago, but is like weekend at burn is still being kept alive on a podium.
yeah, could be
Okay.
unverified reports.
So
Twitter
no,
don't
so no
ban
humans
us.
are being cold, is what you're saying.
No, not yet. And yeah, it's not like these mink were going to be adopted out to loving families
Well, they've
around
got
the
it just
world.
in a coat format.
Yeah, in a coat or a hat or some kind of a belt or
Mink.
I don't know, scarf. Don't they have those wraps that you put around? You see like with the head still on it, and it's like it's like a shawl kind of thing. Maybe that's with
Oh,
fox. Maybe that's with foxes.
I love the idea of a mink belt, though.
Yeah, with the teeth like clasp
Yeah,
on
that's
its
exactly
own.
what it is. The
Yeah,
buckle. There's just two mink clasped
yeah,
the teeth.
that would be actually kind of cool.
Yeah, if nobody's thought of that, let's quick get that in the post, send it to ourselves. That's our idea, Flash. This
Yeah, patent pending, patent pending.
betterposter.com's gone, so we can't use that as a source of income anymore. We need to
That's
sell
right.
mink belts. That's right.
Mink belts.
Yeah.
Mink belts. Mink belts. I'm trying to think of a clever name, but I don't got it. Anyway, humans will not be culled yet.
Motherfucker.
Mink will be culled. 17 million of them.
How many coats is that?
Fuck, I don't know. But those mink farmers are not happy. Let me tell you that.
Really?
Yeah.
How can they
Yeah.
not be happy? So basically, we're going to kill 17 million mink. Isn't that what they're farming?
No, they don't. They don't get to use the. They don't get to use the fur. These bodies need to be incinerated. It's a cull. Yeah,
okay.
they don't. It's not like, oh, we just got to speed up production here, boys. It's like, no, these are just gone. So it's a real waste, really, when you think about it.
Yeah.
And we're kind of deviating from the plot here, but
sorry. Welcome. I've forgotten how a podcast worked. It's been so long. Okay, so let me clarify then.
Mm-hmm.
So we're incinerating 17 million mink.
Correct.
We're not culling any humans.
Correct. For now.
But what are we doing with mink coats? Because surely we can combine the two. So what if we incinerate humans wearing mink coats? Surely that improves the overall survival of the population. Is that not how it works?
I don't know. I'm not an economist. What do I know about these things about supply and demand or something? Maybe we should be buying mink. Maybe mink's going to be a real rare commodity, and we should be buying them up now.
Well, it is now. If they're culling 17 million of them, Jesus.
That's right. And as I will get to, there was already a big mink cull earlier in the year because of Corona. So anyway,
just the way you say mink cull sounds so rude, but at the same time, a massive turn on. I've got to say. But anyway, tell me about the mink cull.
The mink cull. So it's happening in these northern municipalities in Denmark where mink farming is a big thing. So jumping to the humans, it's like roughly 280,000 people are put on this pretty strict lockdown because of this. So no sport and cultural activities. Public transportation has been completely stopped. The regional borders have been closed, so no one's allowed in and out. Only people with like the critical jobs, as we'll say, firefighters, things like this, police officers, all that. They're the ones that are still working. Everything else is basically shut down. Um, all because there's, I think it's like 4 different strains now of corona they've found that they're mink related. Um, so where are we at? So they've known about these strains for a while. Like I think since June, they've seen 214 people in Denmark with some kind of mink related strain. So it's not like overly surprising that these exist. Um, Earlier in the year, as I alluded to, the Netherlands and Spain, I think in the U.S. too, where there's some mink farming, um, there's been a bunch of mink culls, because of COVID. So they've either found strains that were from humans in the mink, and then they were like, we got to deal with this. Like, we don't want it to jump back, or we don't want it to mutate or whatever. So we're going to kill the mink right now. Or they've seen outbreaks associated with these mink strains in the farmers and the villages that do these, that are in the areas where this farming has gone on. And apparently, this coronavirus is the mink are quite susceptible to it. And I mean, we've heard other reports of other animals as well, cats, dogs,
Yeah.
getting it. Um, and from cats and dogs, as far as we know, the risk is still low there. But mink, and I believe their group of their family they're called mutalids or mustelids or something like this.
Yeah. Mustard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't have on hand what else is part of that family. Maybe weasels. I don't
I
know.
think, yeah, I want to say off the top of my head, weasels, ferrets, that type of
Yeah.
shebang.
So the at least in mink for sure, the virus mutates quicker. So for whatever reason, something about the mink immune system, the biology of the mink, the virus seems to just be mutating faster in within those populations, and in that larger family, they're susceptible to these viruses. Um, so that's where the worry is. There was like a vet in the Netherlands who was involved in their mink cull because of the strains they found there, and he reported that it appears to mutate quicker there. So the longer that you have it circulating amongst the mink, the more chances it has to evolve to something more dangerous, right? If it's mutating faster, it's sort of a random, not random, the immune system's exerting pressure on it, but that's the worry. That's why they would kill all the mink, and that's what they did in the Netherlands, and Spain, and like I said, in the US, I believe there was one as well, because they're just like, look, we see that it's in there. It's come from humans, so it's already the human adapted strain. If it gets into mink and then mutates some other crazy way, it could come back, and that it may or may not be more deadly. We don't know, but why take the chance? So they killed a bunch of the mink. Um, and so, like I said, this is in Denmark. They've seen these 4 or 5 strains since January. 214 people since not January, sorry, since June have been. They've identified these strains, so they've been monitoring this situation. But the reason that it's now gotten to the serious point is 12 people have contracted this mink strain of the virus that carries some worrying mutations in the all important spike protein that we've all heard of.
Yeah. Yeah.
The spike protein that it's essential. The spike protein is essential to the virus getting into the cell. And there's no evidence that we know of right now that the strain is more deadly. So that's not the concern. And I wish we had more information to share, but it was in Danish, and I don't speak Danish.
I would say drink more and then you speak fluent
Yeah,
Danish.
it's similar. Like, there's some similarities to German I can pick out, but that's about it. And I mean, yes, I know I could run it through the translator. I know, don't tweet at me being like, "Oh, have you heard of Google Translate?" Yes, I have, but I also have other things to do with my time.
Well, if,
And
also, if you'd have paid attention to the Danish lessons that we used to have with the rest of the AVP group,
ooh, shout out to the AAVP group. You know who you
wow,
are.
yeah, and we had Danish lessons for quite a number of weeks/months there. So you
Yeah, we
basically
did.
saying you didn't pick up on detailed genetic immunology uh, lessons from those basic lessons of how to count to 1 to 10 in Danish.
I'm going to tell you right now, I was not paying attention to any of
Okay,
those lessons.
okay,
My apologies.
it's good that we clarified that important
Uh-huh.
important lesson for all of us there.
I will not invest my time to speak a language that less than what? 20 million people speak?
Ooh,
There you go. Shots fired, Denmark. Shots fired. Um, so yeah, so there's no the institute, the big health institute there. I think it's called the Serum Institute, Staten Serum Institute in Denmark. They've been isolating the strains. They've been working with the strains in the lab. This is the sort of national lab there. They put out a report. It's in Danish, and none of this is published in the literature yet. This is just like on the fly. Their lab is putting out information as they get it. Um, but so there's these 12 people that have this strain. There's no evidence that it's more deadly. So the people are fine, and you know, in terms of the people that have it. The worry comes to the mutations in the spike protein could alter the way that a vaccine works, because a lot of the
okay,
vaccines being developed are targeting the spike protein. So the vaccine recognizes, or the vaccine presents, some portion of the spike protein to the immune system. That's what the immune system recognizes, and the antibodies are built on that to target that. So if there's a mutation in there, the vaccine could be less effective in these people. So
got
if
you.
we have this strain and it spreads around through the population, you could have a section of the population that the vaccine doesn't work as well for, or doesn't work at all. And I saw one report in the Independent, which I believe is a UK
It is.
newspaper.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
And they said, and I couldn't find the source for this. I went to the Serum Institute lab website and just did a quick search and couldn't find the original report. I did find one report in Danish, so maybe it's in there. But the Independent reported that there was preliminary lab tests that showed that the antibodies were responding weakly to this particular mink strain. It's called Cluster 5. This strain 5 or
I
Cluster
wonder where
5.
you were going with that then.
Yeah.
It's called cluster. I was like, oh god, here we go.
Yeah.
This has got us the explicit rating on iTunes. Here we go.
Yeah, yeah. Um, no, cluster 5. So apparently the antibodies that normally would go against SARS-CoV-2 um, don't react as strongly to this strain. So this is where the concern was, and this is why the Danish government has taken such a really
Yeah,
strict, approach to this. And that's what they're all saying. The government is all saying is like, look, we're being safe, rather safe than sorry here. There's no evidence that it's more deadly. We don't really know how this would affect a vaccine because we don't really know what the vaccines are like yet. But they're just like, let's just fuck those mink, get rid of them, try and nip this in the bud. And, sorry, 280,000 Danes, you ain't going nowhere. So that's where this mink strain is at, and I saw it flying around on Twitter. I saw these different news stories and stuff about it, so I thought it'd be interesting to bring it up anyway, and just like let people know what's going on, because maybe they see it. And of course, you see something like this, and the reaction and stuff, and the initial thought might be is like, oh shit, it's mutated. Now we're gonna get like super mink corona, and it's gonna be even worse, and all this. There's no reason to think that right now. They've got it locked down, so hopefully this strain doesn't spread. The worry would be that it would be a vaccine resistant strain. Again, that's a big assumption that the vaccine works in the first place. We don't
well,
know.
yeah,
Um, and that they wouldn't be able to sort of tweak the vaccine to include this strain like you do with flu vaccines, where you have multiple strains and stuff in it. Like It's a lot of unknowns, but it was just basically like, hey, this is out there. Let's just shut it down now so that we don't have to worry about it. And hopefully that works. So that's the Danish mink corona story.
Well, and I think there's obviously been, and rightly so, a lot of work going on, a lot of coverage of the whole vaccine effort and all these hundreds of millions of doses that we available, and we've got it. And I was chatting to somebody this week, and they say, "Oh, you're a scientist," and I hate it when people call me scientist because I'm a pseudo scientist, as we all know. But they were saying, "Oh, well, there's a vaccine, it's fine." What's your view on that? I said, "Well, my high level view, and I stress this, immunology is a million miles away from my comfort zone, but one of the viruses that cause the common cold is coronavirus. And
Mm-hmm.
how long have common colds been around, and how long have we been looking for a cure or a vaccine, and we don't have it? And suddenly we're 10 months into a pandemic where we've got, oh, well, we'll have a vaccine ready by the end of the year. And I'm like, so if I was a betting man, and I'm not, if I was a betting man, I would bet on not having a vaccine by the end of the year, bearing in mind we're now, starting November. I feel, fairly safe I'd make my money back. But I do worry that, out there we are pinning a lot of hopes on, oh, we'll have a vaccine and this is how life will, everyone will get vaccinated and it'll go away. I don't see that, because we know that the common cold and influenza mutates every year, less than a year. And suddenly we're pinning all our hopes on it. And I just, don't get me wrong, I think it can help, and I think it will help reduce the risk, and there'll be certain groups that benefit from it. But as we've seen, are mink the only species that it will jump into and jump out of and mutate on the way? Probably not. I know the sporadic cases of dogs and cats. I think they've shown it's transmitted one way but not the other, and vice versa.
Yeah, and this is an interesting point. I didn't even really think about it in that sense, that like this could be an ongoing threat to the vaccine. Like, I mean, you brought up a number of things there, and I think it's important to note that, like, I mean, one of the reasons we don't have a vaccine for the common cold is just that no one's really tried, because it's not economically, viable. Nobody really wants it's a cold. You don't need a vaccine for it. I don't think anyone's
I think you
really.
find at least 50% of the population that get man flu every year would
Yeah.
jump on board with it.
But you know what I'm saying, like, and coronaviruses don't tend to mutate, as far as I know, don't tend to mutate as much as the flu. So the concern about uh, coronavirus vaccine is not so much that it's like every year you're going to have to develop a new one because of new strains. Although, if it's jumping back and forth between certain animals and mutating, then yeah, maybe. But I mean, mink farming is one area where that might be a concern. I don't think that's a concern with cats and dogs. Um, but you're right in that we should temper our expectations on when a vaccine is coming and how effective it might be. I did talk about this on a podcast without you, Brad, but the the look on your face is actually, well,
What, you've been doing podcasts without me?
oh shit, he didn't know.
What? Shocker.
Yeah. Um, but the technology that they're using, the mRNA vaccine, the DNA, the genetic vaccines, are the front runners, and their efficacy we just don't know yet. So, yeah, and there's been some hiccups in the trials, and actually, Stat News, that I pump all the time on this podcast as a great place to go for any sort of vaccine reporting and biotech reporting and all that. Stat News, Stat Magazine, they just released another article saying, like, look, we all need to temper our expectations on when this vaccine will arrive. And
Yeah.
if you listen to the experts, as we all should, they've all been saying Q2 of next year at the earliest, before
Yeah.
you would see anything kind of roll out. Now, I know the BioNTech, I think it was BioNTech Pfizer collaboration. Pfizer, yeah, I think it was Pfizer. Anyway, they did like an open letter recently, um, to the population, and I think it was more so to kind of tamp down what Trump was saying.
It was all the big pharma companies, basically
Yeah,
saying, this isn't the state of play.
Yeah, we're not here yet. Although they did say in that letter that, like, if all goes well, we're looking at having potentially emergency approval by December, end of November, December, I think was in there. But that's emergency approval. So that would get the vaccine to, healthcare workers and stuff like that. And so yeah, we just don't know. And I think like I said, that open letter I think was just more to like kind of a political move without outright saying we're not going to have a vaccine, like, because obviously they don't want the shareholders to be all upset and stuff.
Yeah,
It's like the company
yeah.
can't
We
come
don't.
out and
We
say
don't.
we're fucked, we're not there yet.
Yeah, we don't want millions of people dying, but fuck, we don't want to upset the investors. So
Yeah, but they also don't want to be like, they kind of had to be like, whatever Trump is saying, that the vaccine's just around the corner, it's not. So I felt like that they were really walking the line there with that
yeah,
letter. Um, but again, like if you listen to the experts in this space, guys like Peter Hotez, who's on Twitter, you can find him on Twitter, great vaccine expert that really is all about communication. I mean, Fauci's been saying it. Basically, anyone that's involved with any sort of high level public health in the vaccine effort is like, it's not till like potentially earliest, we're talking, what's the fourth month of the year? April,
that's the
May.
one. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
In most calendars, that's the one. Yeah,
Right. Yeah, next year. So anyway, that's, yeah, some interesting points you raise about, like, let's say we get a vaccine and then all of a sudden we got to worry about our vaccine's no good because these mutant animal strains keep coming back. My
yeah.
thought on this story was like, I wonder how this influences people who were like sort of saying that, well, it's very unlikely that it jumped from bats to human to pangolins to this, or there was all that conversation about there's no way that this is an animal source, it's got to be a lab creation, and kind of like putting these arguments forward that, like, well, where would a bat and a pangolin have even met, in order for that translation to occur, which is not a valid argument
That's
because,
some sort of sexy nightclub.
yeah, Berlin, of course, it's Berlin. We've already talked about this. And bats and pangolins don't like wearing masks. They're part of the anti-mask crowd. We've all known this. They're real
Yeah,
assholes.
anti-maskers. Well, mainly because they can't operate the zips because they don't have the opposable thumb.
That's right. That's right. If you can
Yeah,
zip it for them, maybe they're into it. But
yeah. Well,
um, it's a dumb argument, though, apparently, because, like, you Google, there's like a paper that came out right after people were saying this, that they were like, bats dwell in caves and so do pangolins in underground burrows. And here's a picture of a bat roost and a pangolin that we've found in our research. We've never published it before because we didn't think it was important. But now people are saying that it's unlikely that bats and pangolins would meet ecologically, and so that there's no way that they could, the virus, therefore it must be China, created it. And they were just like, well, here's a picture of them. But I'm, like, this just shows you that these diseases can jump between species, and they do, and when they do, it's a potentially bad situation. So whether it's originally from a bat, like the first time it got into humans, it's bad, and then if it goes into mink and comes back, it's bad. All the more reason that we should be, stressing zoonotic disease surveillance and the like. And you've all heard me talk about that before. So, anywho, shall we move on?
yeah. Well, yeah. Well. We say move on. Let's stick with the coronavirus theme and move on.
And stick with the vaccine theme, because the other interesting piece of science news that I came across today was a paper published in, let me look at the journal here, the journal, excuse me, of medical ethics. And the paper is called Good Reasons to Vaccinate, Mandatory or Payment for Risk. And basically, this paper was done by a bioethicist by the name of Julian Savulescu, working at the Center for Practical Ethics, the University of Oxford. He's a philosopher and bioethicist, and he's putting forward the idea of incentivizing vaccines. So basically paying people to get a vaccine, right? And I see the look on your face, Brad, and
Mm.
I'm assuming that the look of some of the listeners' faces might be similar. It's like, that sounds kind of fucked up. And it does sound kind of fucked up. Um, we know that vaccines, in order to be effective, need to reach a certain amount of the population, right? We know this. This is the science behind vaccines. You got to reach that certain level that then protects everybody. Um, with COVID, we don't really know what that's going to be because, just as we just described, we don't really know how effective the vaccines are yet. There's still a lot of unknowns as to what vaccine is going to come out and how good it's going to be. But any of the estimates that we're seeing, and that this guy wrote in his paper, it ranges up to potentially 82% of people would need to have a vaccine in order for it to be effective.
So 82%. Okay, because they normally is it normally 60% they say for
Yeah.
herd immunity?
And I'm sure he's just poaching the high end of the
Right.
at the estimate. And I'll be completely honest with people. I've downloaded the paper. I've gone through most of it, but I haven't gone through all of it. So I think he's put a range in there. But it's just like, as an example, that would be the high range of what you would need to vaccinate potentially. So he's just saying, of course, vaccines should be voluntary, but he's making a case for mandatory vaccines if, and these are the four criteria that he puts out, that if these criteria are there, mandatory vaccines might be ethical, might make sense to do. And that's a grave threat to public health. If the vaccine is safe and effective, the pros outweigh the cons of any suitable alternative, and the level of coercion is proportionate. So, that level of coercion being proportionate is basically, I think, what he's saying is, um, the incentive that you're offering outweighs the risk, right? Like, so there's like a net benefit of getting the vaccine, being vaccinated, and also getting whatever incentive you've put on it, whether it's cash or something else. That overall outweighs the risk, any risk associated with the vaccine. So, this is what you have to consider. Vaccines, of course, are not 100% safe. They're one
Well, I
of
was
our
going to say. Sorry, I was going to say. So, is he arguing we need to incentivize this because there is a higher risk involved,
no.
or he's just saying actually we incentivize this to get that high rate of uptake and therefore we're
Yeah.
home dry?
Yeah. So he makes a point to say that, this is only like ethical. Like, this should only be done if a vaccine is already available voluntarily. Like, you're
Right.
not going to do this with a vaccine that you wouldn't offer voluntarily. So it has to meet all the safety, measures that we would already have in place in society. It wouldn't be ethical to do something, like, well, we wouldn't give this voluntarily to the people, but we'll pay you to get it because, like, that's not what he's saying at all. And of course, like, no vaccine is 100% safe. However, they are some of the safest, most effective interventions we've ever come up with. But if you can accurately quantify the level of risk and, make a good estimation of, it's safe enough and effective enough, like I said, to be offered in a voluntary program, um, and you can communicate that to people, you can then accurately say, well, this is a good incentive. Like, this is an appropriate incentive. Um, and he points out, like, a couple of other, like, mandatory safety measures, just to be like, to try and build the argument, as philosophers do. They go through step by step and really try and build out this argument. So the idea of, just like, before we even get to incentives, the idea of a mandatory public health measure. um, and he brings up, of course, seat belts. That's the one we all go to. Seat belts are mandatory. You get penalized for not wearing a seatbelt, and it's, we've all accepted that because it reduces risk and mortality for everybody. Um, the other one he brings up that I never really thought of is military conscription, which is something that society has
Okay.
done many times, and it's the ultimate That's the ultimate risk. You could say risk reward, in the case of, say, World War II or something like this, where it's like, if we don't fight, our country will be taken over, blah blah blah. But you're putting yourself, you're basically signing these people up for, like, what, like a 50-50 chance of dying, or but society has done these things, right? So it's not unheard of that we have these mandatory sort of measures that we put in for the good of everyone. Um, and then to talk about incentives, he uses the example of paying people to do risky jobs. You know,
Okay. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
if you make the incentive enough that compensates the risk, and people are properly compensated, then you're not coercing people. You're not taking advantage of people. You're not taking advantage of the poor. We'll say something like that. It's like there's a balanced risk reward there, right?
So hold on. So actually, that's an interesting part of this argument, though, of actually, as we've seen actually in the US, but we've seen it in the rest of the world. But actually, I know the US have published quite a lot on this. Actually, where we've seen coronavirus have the more devastating effect is in the poorer community,
Mm-hmm.
because they feel people are living in closer quarters more inclined. So
Well,
actually,
less healthcare, whatever, a lot of
yeah,
factors.
right. But actually, then are you right then to incentivize it for those groups? Because actually, the poorer groups probably are more likely. Well, hold on, you're going to give me money for this? Well, yeah, okay, I'm going to do that because I need the money.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, then it's an interesting dilemma of, well, actually, that's the group that actually, if we can target a large population of this large demographic where it is really prevalent as a disease, actually, is that is the incentive then worth it? That's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it gets interesting at that point.
It does. And like he says, it's not coercion as long as it's communicated correctly. As long as, like,
Right,
everything is on the table of, like, this is the risk, which in this case, again, we're talking about a vaccine that would already be offered voluntarily. Like, he mentions, this is like plan B. It's like, if you can't get enough people to voluntarily do the
right. Then
vaccine, then this could be a way of upping your numbers, incentivizing people to do something that, for whatever reason they don't want to do, but overall is safe, to a level that you've deemed, and you're giving them an
yeah.
appropriate level to sort of balance their risk. So,
So basically, you're saying, let me jab you with a small prick for money. Well, there's a portion of people out there in a certain industry already that do that on a regular basis.
and put
Flash.
themselves
So
at risk to disease to do so. Yeah. Yeah.
there
Yeah.
we go. Yeah.
So, one of the quotes that he has is, payment isn't about coercion, is what he's insisting here with this quote. And he says, quote, if a person chooses that option, it's because they believe that overall their life will get better with it. In this case, with the vaccination and the payment. So you're not, like, I guess the point is that you're not, like, forcing them to do it, and you're not really coercing them to do something that is against their better, it's not against their health. It's not going to put them at risk. You're providing them an incentive that, you know, maybe they don't think the vaccine alone is enough to benefit their life. It's not going to harm them, but it's not enough
Yeah.
to go out and get out of their way to do it or whatever. But with that payment, then the whole package becomes, oh, okay, well, now you've just tipped the scales into the favor of doing it. So, um, yeah, it was kind of interesting.
Well, so it's interesting. Well, it's interesting on several levels. But so a friend of mine, his dad was a GP in the UK, a general practitioner. So I know different countries have different health. So basically, in the UK, the way the healthcare system works is you have your general practitioner, and that's who you go to for all your medical ailments. And then if you go and they actually you need to see a specialist for cancer or orthopedics or
Yeah.
dermatology, they'll refer you. But he's your go-to. He
In
or
North
she is your
America,
go-to
that you would
person.
say, like, your family doctor.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So
In
his
German,
dad
it's
was
the
the
house arts,
right. Well, I
or
know
the
some
Germans.
countries are very much you don't do that. You just go, well, actually, I've got a skin condition, so I'll go and see a dermatologist. But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah,
so his dad was a GP and a partner in a big GP practice. And I remember talking to him. So I think the UK have been the biggest proponent of this, but I know it's also been a global problem of the MMR vaccine. So measles, mumps, and rubella. So there was a paper published that was since retracted, where it basically said there was a link between the MMR vaccine and autism,
Mm-hmm.
and it had a devastating effect in the UK of parents putting their children forward for this vaccine. Um, and to the point of those three diseases, measles, mumps, and rubella, seeing a massive spike in cases because of it. Because parents were like, "Well, actually, no, hold on, I'm not going to give my child this vaccine if they're going to get autism."
Mm-hmm.
As I said, this paper was later then retracted, and the author has at least been sued. I'm not sure if it's even gone to the
Wakefield,
criminal
right?
level.
Yeah, he's like
Yeah,
lost his license and
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So a massive thing. But I remember talking to him about general practice in general, pardon the expression. But so the way that at the time, and I don't know if it's still the same, this was probably about 10 years ago, he was saying the way he got paid was based on the uptake of vaccines. So for him to get paid and reimbursed by the state, he had to vaccinate 90% of the people eligible on his books,
Mm-hmm.
which he said for any other vaccine, it was mandatory, tetanus or whatever, not a problem.
Yeah.
He said, but for the MMR vaccine, that's a massive problem. So he said, then the government are basically saying, well, we're not going to give you any extra money, but we're expecting you to publicize this, to refute all the allegations, to
Yeah.
really push this. And if you do that, you might hit 90%, and therefore you might get your money back, and we might pay you
Yeah.
to do your job. And that's smacks a little bit of this. You would hope that most people would go, coronavirus, hold on, we've had
Yeah.
2 lockdowns for that. It's had a devastating effect. Of course, I'm going to have that vaccine. But I think there is a large population out there that would actually say, vaccine,
Yeah.
not to the vaxxers level, but to the level of, actually, you've kind of rushed this vaccine through. I'm
Right.
going to wait. So, yes, it might be safe and it might be approved and whatever. I'm going to wait. So, actually, it's an interesting
Maybe.
concept to dangle
Yeah,
that carrot.
it
And
is.
rather than pay the GP that carrot, maybe you pay it to the person.
Well, and I think paying it to the person makes more sense because when people hear that that the doctor is being incentivized to give them the vaccine, then that just feeds into the rumors of they're trying to fucking vaccinate me against my, there's this secret thing going on where the doctors get
Exactly.
paid to give me this shot. The government wants me to get it and they're paying doctors to give it to us, like it
Why
feeds
can't
into
they
that whole narrative.
put the vaccine into aviation fuel?
Right. And just like you're saying some kind of a spray, some kind of a
Control the
trail.
lot of us.
Yeah. And there you go. Hey, if it worked, it worked. But
Well, if it does, Flash, again, whack that in an envelope, send it to us.
yeah. Patent
That is
pending.
our idea.
Patent
Yeah,
pending.
patent pending. Yeah, back away, people. That's our idea.
Yeah. And I think that he does mention in his paper specifically that you're not going to reach the anti-vaxxers with this. It's not about that. Those people are already like they're not. There's probably no level of money that you can give them that will get them to take it. It's
No,
not
exactly.
about that.
Yeah.
But it's like you said, there is probably some people that for whatever reason, maybe it's just they're like, I don't want to take the time out of my day. It's I got to take the bus all the way to the pharmacy or to the doctor to make an appointment to get the shot, and that's time out of my day. I already work 10 hours a day, like all these things, right? Like there could be
Yeah.
any number of reasons that people are vaccine hesitant, not anti-vax are going to do what anti-vax are going to do, but vaccine hesitant will say. And like you mentioned too, oh, this thing's been rushed, maybe this, maybe that, but again, we're talking about something here. Let me do one last quote from this guy because I think it kind of sums it up a bit better, and we can kind of wrap it up from there. But the quote is, if a vaccine were deemed to be safe enough to offer on a voluntary basis without payment, it must be safe enough to incentivize with payment because the risks are reasonable. It may be that those who are poorer may be more inclined to take the money and the risk, but this applies to all risky or unpleasant jobs in a market economy. It is not necessarily exploitation if there are protections in place, such as a minimum wage, or in this case, a fair price is paid to take on the risk. And that makes sense to
Okay.
me, like that's
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
philosopher, I'm covering all my bases with my argument speak, but it does make sense to me. And then he goes on to cite some economic figures that, again, depending on, and I didn't dig into all the numbers that he was actually, putting out, because I don't know what he's saying the appropriate price for a vaccine would be. And we don't know, because we don't know what the risks of the new coronavirus vaccine are. But it could be cheaper than what, for example, the UK is currently spending like 60 billion on furlough on the furlough program for all the businesses that are shut down and stuff because of the pandemic. That's a lot. If you were, again, you put a number on what if it's 10 pounds or whatever it is for the vaccine, and you need 82%, like you could see how it could come in less than 60 billion. He mentions other precedents of incentivizing civic duty, so paying for blood donations. Something that's already done.
Right. In the US, yeah.
Yeah,
Is it done in Canada or not?
I think you get paid for plasma in Canada potentially,
Right.
but not blood.
Right.
And he did mention that the UK doesn't pay for blood, but they import blood from places that do pay. And he said you could also set up another incentive besides cash. You could People that get vaccinated don't have to follow the social distancing rules. They don't have to wear a mask, like all these other things you could do. You could also set up a system where if you don't need the cash and you're going to get vaccinated anyway, you could donate it back to the health system to get like an altruistic motive for it. So it's like the incentive doesn't necessarily have to be cash, but putting some kind of incentive on it kind of
Yeah.
makes sense. And I do, like, I didn't, I really think it makes more sense to give it to the person rather than the doctor. I didn't think about the doctor thing until you brought it up, but I think I think it would work better
Yeah.
to give it to the person rather than the doctor.
Yeah.
Vaccine
I guess
hesitant
it,
people are going to, like, when they hear that about the doctor, I know I already said it, but like they're going to be like, the
well,
doctor's
it's a
getting
push.
paid to do this to me.
I guess ultimately, is there a push me pull you approach? So you've got the pull me of the doctor being incentivized, and they're going to work for it. But then you have to. Do you have to put more of an incentive to the GP? So you just can't say to the doctor, "Well, you'll get paid if you do this." Do you have to say you'll get paid, but we'll also give you a bursary to advertise this and to publicize this
Right,
and
right.
whatever? And then the push me approach is, but we'll also incentivize the patient. There'll be a cash reward or a voucher reward or
Yeah.
whatever else it is. It's an interesting dilemma. When we were in, I always love saying it, when we were in pre-production, it makes it sound really grand. When we were basically opening our beer and topping up our glasses before we started recording, and you mentioned this, it's like, well, this is quite clear cut. What that's just ethically wrong to be promoting it, but actually we already do it on some level already.
Mm-hmm.
So why not just flip that model and rather than pay this person, pay this person?
Yeah. And, like I said, there's a number of examples where we have mandatory health things that we already do. We already incentivize some, civic duty, stuff like this. So, yeah, interesting concept.
Yeah, very much so.
And I'm done.
Well, okay, right. Well, shit, Brad better pick up the slack there then. So, Brad has obviously been away for a little while, and to really emphasise how much he's been away, he'd done not as much research as he should, but I think we touched on it. Well, it must have been 12 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
We did an episode on the Nobel Prizes.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, the Nobel Prizes were announced last month, the end of last month.
Mm-hmm.
And when this popped into my newsfeed, I thought it'd be good to pick up on. So I thought I'd highlight the main ones. Literature and economics. Who really cares?
Yeah.
We're about science, so let's talk about science. So really, it's a shout out to those that have won Nobel Prizes. Not that they haven't been shouted at enough. They've won a Nobel Prize and got the medal and got cash. But
Well, they've been
I
waiting
wanted
for
to.
the too bad for you acknowledgement, of course.
Well, exactly. Yeah, this effectively it's the icing on the cake.
Yeah. Other than the
They've had the
Nobel
cake.
Prize itself,
Yeah.
this is
Then
what you look for.
this is what it's about. So, firstly, so as we've talked about Nobel Prizes and how they came about, if you want to hear about that, go and search through our podcasts. And Alfred Nobel, really interesting character, and how it came about was basically because his obituary got published while he was still alive, and he
Didn't like it.
literally didn't like it, crapped himself, and changed his life, which is an interesting moral for all of us. But anyway, Nobel Prizes were announced last month. So the recap, really. So Nobel Prize for Medicine and Physiology first. So this was split between 3 people. So it went to Harvey Alter, Michael Houghton or Houghton, depending on how you want to pronounce that, and Charles Rice. And basically their award was for the discovery of hepatitis C. So,
thanks, guys.
yeah, well, and
Thanks
when I
for
first read
pointing
that
one out.
Yeah, a little bit late to the party. Surely the clue was, well, there's A and B.
Yeah,
C's not a big leap. But actually, at the time, it was. So, at the time, in the 1940s, there had been shown to be 2 types of hepatitis. So there was one type that was being shown to come from pollutants, so water or food. But there was this other type that people hadn't put their finger on. And then eventually in the 70s, I think around about 76, 76 is when actually a guy called Bloomberg was awarded the Nobel Prize for his work on hepatitis B, who showed that hepatitis B actually was bloodborne. And now there's vaccines and whatever.
But hepatitis B had previously been categorized as with the pollutant one.
So we knew there was hepatitis.
Yeah.
And in the 40s, as early as the 40s, we knew that there were 2 types. There was this bloodborne version.
Okay.
And there was this foodborne natural pollutant version.
Okay.
So you start screening for that, and obviously vaccines have been. And so hepatitis A is quite short-lived. You diagnose it, you can manage it, and that's fine, is my understanding. Hepatitis B, a lot more serious, but actually once it was identified, then there's now a vaccine. Yeah. And, as we talked about, vaccines are brilliant. They're the savior of the world, so that's fine. What they actually then discovered is, well, actually, we're still seeing cases. We're vaccinating at hepatitis B. We're screening for hepatitis B in blood transfusions, but we're still seeing hepatitis. Mm-hmm. Why is that? And effectively, it was due to hepatitis C. So their discovery, these 3 people, basically have led to the fact of increased screening for this, and it's basically dramatically cut the number of hepatitis cases through bloodborne transmission, because now we've developed really sensitive tests for it, and ultimately then treatments for it, and then potentially ultimately vaccines for it.
Right, and hepatitis C is also fluid transmission, right? Blood.
Yeah.
But it's not. You don't get it from sex, right?
That is a very good question. I think you can.
I think you can.
I think you can. You ask a good question, and I'm scrolling through my notes here. It's fluid. It's bloodborne. I would.
Oh, okay.
As I said,
it's.
I'm not a betting man.
I just looked it up. Apparently, it's blood-to-blood contact only. So I know it's like prevalent in needle drug using communities.
Okay.
But only sexual activities that would increase the potential exposure for blood-to-blood.
Well, I was going to say.
What?
I was going to say it depends on your sexual preference.
Well, yeah. And it's actually kind of an important thing to note is that it is. So for heterosexual relationships, low, but in men sleeping with men, there is a larger potential for blood-to-blood transmission.
Okay.
As you could see.
There we go. And, fortunately, we're socially distanced with about 600 miles between us, Flash, probably even more than that. So there's no risk of hepatitis C spreading between us right now, at least. So that was the Nobel Prize for Medicine and Physiology. So congratulations to those 3 people. So Harvey Alter, Michael Houghton, and Charles Rice. The next Nobel Prize I want to cover was the Nobel Prize for Physics, which, Flash, you and I, we know we love
Whoa,
physics.
whoa, whoa, wait. Let me. Was
Ooh.
it Penrose?
Ooh, look at you throwing out the. Yes, it was Sir
Nice,
Roger
Sir
Penrose.
Roger.
Well, he shared it. He
Oh,
shared it.
okay,
He didn't
shared
get
it.
it by himself.
Well, I don't know who the other person was.
Three people shared it. So you're right. Yeah, Sir Roger Penrose, who's based at the University of Oxford, he shared his award with two others. So he got his share of the award for, and I quote, the discovery that black hole formation is not a robust prediction of the general theory of relativity.
Yeah, it went against some Einstein shit, right?
It didn't. So, but we'll come on to that. The other two people that got it were Reinhard Genzel and Andrea Gies, or Gies, Ghez.
Andrea.
Yeah. So
All right, we got a
they
lady in
shared their
there.
award. Yeah, well done. They got their award for the discovery of the supermassive compact object at the center of our galaxy.
Ugh.
Yeah. So,
Turns out it's a giant squid.
it was just a speck on the screen. They spat on the screen and hadn't cleaned it off.
Yeah.
No, it's fine.
No, there's a giant octopus at the center of the universe. Everybody knows that, and its tendril arms go out and make all the galaxies.
Well, that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is that God clapped his hand and there was a universe. But anyway, so Roger Penrose, basically, he piggybacked is the wrong word, but he took Einstein's theory and then added one, effectively. So what he showed is the general theory of relativity leads to the formation of black holes.
Right.
And then, as we talked about, Reinhard Genzel and Andrea, and I looked up how you pronounce Andrea's surname, but it's Ghez. I'll say Gehez. Discovered that an invisible but extremely heavy object governs the orbits of the stars at the center of our galaxy, and a supermassive black hole is the only current explanation. Now, it might be that that's
not
what it is, but
that's kind of creepy to think that there's we found that there's this giant mass, whatever it is, that everything is kind of rotating around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of creepy. And it seems like it's the perfect thing for humans to be well, we got to send a ship there. Well, we got to figure that out. And you're going to send people there, and it's going to be something totally fucked up, and it's not going to, science fiction horror movie. You get there, and it, warps time and reality. It's actually a portal to hell. What was that movie? Event Horizon? The shitty 90s movie that terrified me when I was a kid. But it's kind of weird that it's just look at, there's this just big lump out there that's pulling everything around it because it's just so heavy.
So big. Yeah.
The center of the universe.
So when I first looked up, I started getting, they don't announce them all on the same day. They stagger them. And I started getting, this person has been awarded this prize. And so then I dug into it. And what really attracted me to this story, which is how I logged into it. And
was the giant mass at the center of the universe.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't the supermassive black hole. Which
I was saying it pulls everything into orbit. That was my joke.
I'm drawn to supermassive black holes, as you know, Flash. But no, what really got me was so you mentioned Roger Penrose. So there was an interview with him, and it basically said if you ever struggle with maths, you're in good company with Sir Roger Penrose. So he basically said he was always very slow, but he was good at maths. But he didn't necessarily do well at tests. And I think this is amazing. And I quote, "But the teacher realized if he gave me enough time, I would do well. I basically had to do everything by working out, but from first principles." So basically, he gave me a little bit of confidence because I'm the same as him. I did physics at A level in the UK, and I loved it, but I was terrible at it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I was terrible at it, in tests at least, not just because I'm terrible at physics, was because I'm not brilliant in maths. And there was 12 of us in my physics class, and I was the only one that didn't do A-level maths. And a lot of physics is around maths. So we would get given a physics problem, 11 others in the class would churn through the maths quite quickly because they're doing it 66% of the time that week.
Yeah.
Whereas I wasn't. So I would literally have to go back to first principles and work it all the way through. And by the time I'd done that, I'd run out of time to actually give the answer.
Yeah. I feel your
So
pain.
when I read, so when I read this, it struck a chord. It also struck a chord because he's Canadian.
Oh, Penrose
Or
is
we went.
Canadian?
The lessons. Well, he was in Canada. Yeah, I'm guessing he's obviously not Canadian because he's got a knighthood. But
Yeah, I don't think we're allowed to get knighthood.
no, you can have an honorary knighthood, but that doesn't confer down to your children afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But he went on to become a star of mathematics at UCL, University College London, and then Cambridge, where he went on to do a PhD. But it just really struck a chord for me. Somebody that now is a Nobel Prize laureate, which is in science, potentially one of the highest accolades, if not the highest accolades you can have, is openly said on record he wasn't the best at this, but he had a teacher in him that believed, and teachers, rightly or wrongly, get a hard press, but I think in this case, that to me was inspirational that he's turned around and said, well, actually, without that teacher, would he or wouldn't have been where he is now? And I think that's...
I mean, good teachers they've, at a lot of these high success stories, when you look back, there'll be a story about a good teacher that helped them along the way, and I
Yeah.
think teachers do deserve a shout out. My brother's teacher, a good teacher, and they can really make a difference, and we should appreciate our teachers. They're good
Yeah,
ones
very much
anyway.
so. Yeah, exactly. And then Reinhard and Andrew that also shared the prize. Really what they did is they used the world's largest telescopes, but they developed a method to see through the interference. So the interstellar gases that got in the way, when you're looking this far into the galaxy, there's a lot of stuff that gets in the way. And actually what they did was, using this telescope, developed a technique to compensate for the interference or the distortion that those gases and items produce, to be able to look to see, well, actually, evidence suggests that there is this supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy, which kind of backs up a lot of the physics that we base everything on. Which, Nobel Prizes are fascinating to me. And then the next, we've got medicine and physiology, so that's your biology. You've got your physics, so obviously the one that's missing is chemistry. And this for me was an interesting one because we've talked about this several times on the podcast. So this was shared between two scientists, so Emmanuel Charpentier and Jennifer Doudna. And basically what they discovered was the CRISPR tool, so the genome editor.
That hadn't
Which
already
obviously
won?
No.
Oh, wow. Okay. And they got it for chemistry, biochemistry, obviously.
Yeah. So, it's obviously had a massive impact on life sciences in general, new cancer therapies, genetic disease therapies. This has really been groundbreaking. So, Charpentier published her discovery in 2011. And then in the same year, she went into this collaboration with Jennifer Doudna, who was a biochemist with an expertise in RNA, and together they have built on this. And so many modern therapies that are out there now are based on CRISPR, and so many of the therapies that are coming or in regulatory review or diagnostic review are all based on this technology. And scientists don't always get they get the Nobel medal and they get a cash award, but the majority of scientists out there aren't doing it for that. They're doing it for the furthering of science, and because they're just encouraged and they want to do things because of their love of science. And I think we don't give that enough credit in the world, let alone in this country alone. I've not been through a PhD, Flash. I know you have, and I know they're not easy to come by and they're not easy to work through. And I don't think we fund them fully enough, because they're effectively the backbone of science that we build upon. So I'd like to give a a virtual round of applause from Too Brad for You to the winners of all the Nobel Prizes, not just chemistry,
Jazz snaps.
physics, just now. Oh, I like what you've done there. And medicine, physiology, all the Nobel Prizes, and to all the scientists out there, because you do a lot of work that isn't always recognised. So I doff my virtual cap to you all.
I mean, yeah, what more can you say? Where would we be without it? So we're obviously, big fans, and you could say biased, but I really don't. How can you not be on board with science? Come on.
No, exactly. Either you're on board with science or you're a loser.
Yeah, or you're a Luddite.
Well, that as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. Thanks for the roundup, because I didn't know that CRISPR hadn't won. I had heard that Penrose had won, and I didn't know that there was a giant fucking blob at the middle of the universe that's, sitting there. It's kind of creeping me out right now, but all
Well,
right.
no, don't let it keep out. It's fine. I think we've still got around about 3.9 million years before the sun goes supernova and we all die. So
Yeah.
unless
And we're still expanding away from this mass, though. The universe is still expanding, right? So that mass isn't pulling us in yet. Their evidence suggests that it's the rotation of the stars. Like everything's kind of orbiting around this.
for the time being.
That's bizarre. Or it's this is
I,
where the Big Bang started.
Yeah.
The origin of the Big Bang is the big hole. What comes out of the big hole? Big old bang.
And I thought it was just me that made the shitty jokes on this podcast.
It's not even a joke, man. That's an observation. That's a straight up fact.
It seems in my absence, while being the man of mystery for the last few months, you've adopted some of my traits. So thank you, Flash. So do you want me to summarise where we've been on this journey?
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, firstly, I apologise, listener. I've been a man of mystery. I've been absent for a while. Flash has basically been a podcast fluffer for the last few months. But I'd implore you all to go and have a listen, especially the In Conversation shows. I really enjoy listening to those. So I'd ask all the listeners. We don't know how many of you are. There's millions, because obviously we've
declared it.
We've declared it. We've stopped counting, and that's fine. Coronavirus is still here. We don't think it's going to go anywhere quickly. Keep an eye on your media outlets as well as us. But obviously, we will keep you informed. Once coronavirus is gone, we will let you know.
Yeah. And if you see a mink, kill it.
Yeah, basically, minks need to be terminated. So be a mink terminator. Yeah. Be more Arnie.
Do your part.
Yeah, and I don't want to incite violence, but I'd also question anyone wearing mink. You maybe want to incinerate them as well, but
that was an interesting angle that we didn't get to, is that the some animal rights activists were actually applauding this, which you would think that they wouldn't want all the mink to die, but I think they viewed it as a death knell for the industry. That if this gets wiped out, maybe the industry.
If we make the mink extinct, then we do away with the fur trade. Yeah, what a brilliant idea that
not
is.
The mink. Not all minks will go extinct, but the mink farms.
Okay.
Because I guess that's obviously that would be where the risk for transmission would be, because they're all packed together. It's just like birds, avian flu, blah blah blah, all that stuff, swine flu. Anyway,
like us having family gatherings and things. No, that's fine. So, yeah, coronavirus is still there. Keep an eye on it. What we didn't touch on, and let's roll this over because I know we're at time. But fusion versus fission. I know we've touched on it before, but it's within grasp. But
allegedly,
let's leave that as a teaser.
It's a teaser.
7 years in development and £55 million is a very strong bet that maybe it's here. But let's pick that up next time. Coronavirus is still here. Nobel Prizes, round of applause. They'll be back this time next year. We'll cover that again. And I'm almost out of alcohol.
Yeah.
So what better way to finish the show?
Yeah. Sounds good. Hey, great. Okay, it's been a pleasure, man.
It's been a blast. We had a slight technical difficulty halfway in between, which Fast is going to edit out with his skills.
Had you not said it, no one would ever notice.
Well, they'll never know. You can edit that bit out. Nobody will ever know. But yeah, as always, I know because I get the notifications, even though I've not been around, that some of you have been contacting the show, which I have to admit fills my heart with a little bit of joy. So you can contact the show at 2brad4you on Twitter. It's the same on Instagram as well. If you want to get in touch with me, Brit Brad, that's at Bradley W. Hayes on Twitter. Flash, if they want to tickle your taste buds and get to fluff you, how do they do that?
Happy Vampiredon. Everybody knows at this point.
Well, that's probably what you drone on about, isn't it? In all your shows, just for hours and hours on end. There's no actual content. It's just you just reciting that over and over.
That's right.
And over. Yeah. Much like your love making technique, Flash, but it works for you. Who am I to criticize?
Hey-o.
Hey-o, they're all here. Welcome back, listeners. Flash, we've already said it's been a pleasure. Listeners, I apologize. It won't be so long. We've got plans potentially back in December. Well, Flash will be back before that. He's already told me he's got a load of content lined up, but I hopefully will be slotted into that content somewhere.
It's true. Anytime. This show always has time for the second Brad.
Well, I would hope so. It's called 2 Brad for You.
Right.
It's
open invite.
It's not 1 Brad for You.
We're always
open invite for the co-host to come back at any time and co-host.
It's always better when we're together.
Well, hey, that is very true. That is true in so many walks in life, but none more so in the podcast life of 2 Brad for You.
All right. Thank you all for listening.
Yeah, thank you, all of you, the millions of you, and next time we speak, maybe we'll have a new president of the free world to announce.
Or we'll all be dead. Let's see. Bye.
Stay safe, listeners, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Cheers, Flash. Take care.
Yeah, I suppose. Sometimes, there's just not good outtakes, and I'm not going to force it if it's not there.
Well, the number of girls I've said that to, but
Wow. Nothing's changed. It's been a while, but nothing's changed.
Well, they've said that to me as well.
I'm going to open up this beer in reserve.
Get it
so that we don't.
I like
so
it.
we don't have the the sound on.
Oh no, I think we should use that sound.
Yeah, maybe.
You use that.
Let's see if I picked it up.
You use that sound. I'll use this sound. Listen. And that's not me peeing to anyone listening. That's me topping up my wine glass.
I was going to say, that doesn't sound healthy.
Yeah. Who doesn't love a golden shower while listening to a podcast?
It's for Trump.
You may or may not love a golden shower. Who knows? There we go. That's better.
You ready to roll?
Yeah. Oh, what order are we doing this in?
Oh, fuck. That's good.
Yeah.
Good. Good call.